Hello all, I'm Sai and you're watching The Book Dragon. In today's video, I'm bringing to you 10 very peculiar books as recommendations. I'm saying that these books are very peculiar because I've not read any other books like these 10 books. And I'm sure that there's at least one book which resembles each of these books out there. And if you have read any of the books like those that I'm speaking about today, do let me know in the comments below because I'd like to read more books like these 10 books. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. The first book that I'm going to speak about today is Birthday Girl by Haruki Murakami. Now, this is a very tiny book. It's not even a short book, guys. It's a tiny book. It's just 40 pages long, and see the size of the book. If this is the size of a normal paperback, okay, so I just gave away a recommendation already. If this is a normal size paperback, this is the size of Birthday Girl, and it is so short and it is also so thin. So it will just take like 15 or 20 minutes for you to read. The actual story of this book is that of a girl who's also a waitress, and this happens during the night of her 20th birthday. She's actually part-time working in a restaurant, and what happens is that on her 20th birthday, she is asked to deliver this meal to the restaurant owner, who has decided to come and stay in one of the rooms in the restaurant for like 1 or 2 days, and she's also asked not to speak whatsoever to the owner. And what happens is that due to some circumstances, she ends up speaking with him. What happens after they talk with each other, what they actually talk with each other, and what all happens after that, that's the actual thing in the story. You might think that I've given away a lot of the story itself, but it's not, because all these things happen like within the first 5 or 6 pages of this very tiny short 40 pages book. So you will get a lot more if you read this, and I'd highly suggest you not to buy this and rather borrow it from someone who actually owns it and then read, because it's such a tiny book. I actually spent 50 rupees knowing that, and did not knowing that it was such a small little copy. I'd suggest you to borrow this one and read, because it's magical in every sense and it is also very, very peculiar. The next book that I'm recommending is Symptoms of Being Human by Jeff Garvin. Now, in this book, we deal with the protagonist who's a gender fluid person. Okay, the actual person that is the protagonist of the story is neither male nor female. They are not even transgendered males or transgendered females. They are not gay in any way. The very peculiar thing about this book is that the sexuality of the main character, we cannot decide whether the person is male or female, because a person himself or herself cannot. That's the main thing about this book. And while you're reading the book, you get different points of view from the same person, because at times the person feels like a male, at times the person feels like a female, and how this person makes others feel and how they react to the things that this person does, they are like very, very beautifully portrayed. And how tough the life of a person like that is like, and how are certain things that they try to make other people understand their life as like, and what are all these things even worse when it happens to a person that is famous. That's what is told in this book. It is really, really good, and if you want to experiment with your reading, I highly suggest you to try Symptoms of Being Human by Jeff Garvin. The next book that I'm recommending is Wonder by Palacio. Now, in this book, we have a little boy named Augustus, and there's a very different and peculiar thing about Augustus. It is that he has had like a different gene mutation, and it happens like 1 in a million people, and due to this, Augustus has had a number of surgeries as a child, and due to these number of surgeries, his face doesn't look like that of a normal person, and he's experiencing a lot of problems due to his physical appearance. He's being homeschooled until he's in 4th grade, but when he enters 5th grade, he's made to join a middle school, and he accepts and joins the school and makes a lot of it. How kids understand different things, that's excellently portrayed in this one. Usually this type of stories told from an adult point of view itself is so difficult, and it is very, very hard and also dangerous to experiment such a territory. But in this book, Palacio has done it in the best way, and the better thing about this book is that it is shown from the point of view of a child, not from that of an adult. How a child may feel while he or she is experiencing something that is so different and so hard when it comes to the society as a whole. If we consider all these things, this is a really great piece of work, and I'm sure that if you read this book, you'll be able to see your life from a different tone in every way. So do read Palacio's Wonder. The next book that I'm recommending is Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. Now, in this book, we have a girl named Maddie, And the different thing about Maddie is that she's allergic to each and every small thing in the world. So what happens is that she's in a quarantine. She's in her home quarantine her entire life, like we people are like now during this pandemic going on. And just imagine, it is so difficult for us to stay in home for a short amount of time, that is a period of 3 to 4 months itself until now. But the thing about Maddie is that she's been in home in her room alone for like the past 11 to 12 years. That is so difficult, guys. How she faces things and how books are like her best companions when it comes to such a condition. And she's allergic to almost everything. So there are only two people whom she meets on a daily basis. They are her mother and her doctor. Apart from this, she's also tutored well, but she's tutored in an online way, so it's only a virtual presence, it's not an actual presence. What happens is that after a few days, there's a new family which comes and resides in the neighboring house, and there's this boy named Oliver, and Oliver as well as Maddie, they start building up a friendship which then transforms into love in some sort. And there's this twist at the end of the story which is also a bit predictable yet good. And if you want to read a very peculiar type of story, I'd highly recommend you to read Everything by Nicola Yoon. The next book is actually a non-fiction book, and it is Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. Now in this book, the author Mitch Albom speaks about his experiences with his teacher, who's Mr. Morrie. And the thing about is that he meets Professor Morrie every Tuesday in his adulthood, and there's a reason why he's suddenly meeting Professor Morrie. It is that Professor Morrie, he's not normal now due to certain nervous disorders that he's facing right now. He's going to die in a few more months, but the best thing about Morrie is that he's trying to make the best of his life with the short amount of time that he actually has. All of us people, we are just moving on in our lives, not knowing when it is going to end. But Morrie, on the other hand, knows that it is going to end in a few more months, but he doesn't take that in a negative sense at all. What he does is that he does everything in his power to make the best of that last chunk of his life. And I'm sure that if you read this book, it will be very much motivational and will encourage you to do a lot more great things in life. And I'm sure that everyone needs to read this book. I'm also planning to reread this by the end of this year, because it was so good the first time I read this. And usually non-fiction books are better when you read them for the second time, and I'm highly pumped to read this in the future this year. The next book is actually a recent read for me. I've just read it this month, that is July, and it is The Nameless Relationship by Preethi Shenoy. This is my first Preethi Shenoy book. I read it actually because it was available for free in Prime Reading, and the book is tiny, okay? If Birthday Girl is 40 pages long, this one is just 11 pages long, okay? Believe me, it's just 11 pages long. And I rated this book 4 stars because it was such a different type of story from which I normally read. And in this book, we see two main characters who are this elderly woman who's in her 40s, and this guy who's in like his later 20s or his earlier 30s, and an affair that they two have. This lady, she's actually married to a man, and she has her own son and daughter who are settled in their lives. They have their own families, but this lady has this different affair with this person. And how she feels about this affair, she knows that it is not fair for her relationship with her husband, yet the flavor of this book was very nice, guys. I'm not sure how I'm not able to express how I felt about the story, but I liked it a lot because it was so different, and it was so different, okay? It was like a different shade of life, if you ask me. And if you want to experiment with such type of reading, I'd highly recommend you to read The Nameless Relationship by Preethi Shenoy. The next book that I'm recommending is also one of my recent reads, and I read this last month, and it is Life of Pi by Yann Martel. Now, in this book, we have this little boy named Pi who grows to be like a young adult man. And what happens is that they own this huge zoo in the 70s in India, in Pondicherry, and they have to sell the zoo and vacate all the animals and move to Canada. What happens is that all of a sudden, while they are moving, their ship gets stuck in a storm, and everyone except Pi dies, and he manages to get escape using a single lifeboat. And in the lifeboat, he's not alone. That's the main problem. He's companioned by 4 other beasts, which are an orangutan, a tiger, a Bengal tiger, that's the main thing, a Bengal tiger, a hyena, and a zebra. The hyena ends up eating the zebra and killing the orangutan, and how he is faced off by the tiger, and how Pi as well as the tiger make it alive out of the sea after like 7 months of being shipwrecked. That's the actual plot of the story. It is so good, guys. I think the author has done a great way of making the reader experience a lot of things while being in a single place itself. That's the main thing about this book. I also have a dedicated review for this one. I'll try to link it above in the iCard or down in the description, or both, if you want to check it out, because I think everyone needs to read this book because it will be a great experience while reading it. The next book is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. Now this book is about two boys, and what happens is that in this world there's this different thing. What happens is that the day you're going to die, you'll receive a phone call and you'll be informed that in the next 24 hours you'll die for sure, and there's nothing you can do about it. You'll just know that you're going to die. So what you can do is you can finish off certain things which you need to finish off by the end of your life, or you can just enjoy the last day of your life. Some things like that happen. And what happens on a particular day is that these two boys, who are the main characters, they both get the calls, and it is said that they're both going to die, and they just happen to meet by some chance, and things happen between them. They develop a really good relationship, and at the end, just as the title of the story itself says, they both die. They both die at the end. That's the climax of the story. But how they are going to die, that's the thing which you're rooting for. Usually we root for characters how they are going to succeed by the end of the book, right? But in this book, the main peculiar thing is that you'll be rooting for how the main characters in the story are actually going to die. It is not that they might die or they might not die. They are going to die for sure. There's no other alternative. They're going to die, but you're just going to experience how they're going to move towards their death. The next book is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. Now the peculiar thing about this book is the magic system. Okay, magic in this book is actually in the form of breath. How a person's soul is inside us. There is this thing which resembles the soul called breath, and as much a person has breath, the more will be his or her capability to deal with magic. And there's also this magic system which is mostly based on colors. That is, while drawing the breath out of an object, what you do actually is that you suck the color out of it, and it just becomes like different tones of gray. You don't have the actual color of the object, but you just have it in gray tones or gray shades, and that's how you actually get the color. The cover of this book is great because you see it is totally gray everywhere, but you can see like streaks of color, like the color spectrum here. That's the best thing about this book. And if you do read this, I'm sure that you'll have a lot of fun because the characters in this one are so good. The plot is also very greatly moving. I'll not say that it's the best paced book, but it being slow paced for a huge book, it'll make you read continuously. The last book that I'm recommending today is It by Stephen King. Now this is the biggest book that I'm recommending today because see, it's nearly 1200 pages long, and it is a huge, hefty, big book. Okay, I'm saying big that many times because it's that big, and it will also take a lot of time to read. So if you're considering to read this, give yourself time because it will take like at least a month if you have to enjoy the story while reading it, because it's so tough to read. This story deals with the happenings around the town of Derry, in which every 27 years there is this terrible thing which is called it just comes, feeds on the fear of the people and kills people all of a sudden. It happens every 27 years continuously. What happens is that there is this group of 7 kids called the Losers, and they try and defeat it while they are in their childhood. And what happens as usual is that after 27 years it comes back in their adulthood, and it draws them back to Derry from the different parts of the country where they are in, and they try and defeat it for the second time. That's the plot of this book. If you're a person who's looking for great world building as well as totally so intricately developed characters, then I highly recommend It by Stephen King. Okay, these are all the peculiar books which I had to talk about in this video, and if you do have any peculiar book suggestions, do drop them down in the comments below. And if you did enjoy watching this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it to your friends. If you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.